So yeah, it's Halloween today, and you might have noticed I look a little bit different. It's because I'm going out as Heisenberg today. So I'm going to do a shitload of meth and. No, I'm kidding. I don't do that on a weekday. But
Howdy, howdy. Welcome to a Thursday collection connection where we're playing that game that's just an excuse to talk about records. Play the game with my brother, Plastic Eric, from the Plastic Soundwave Cult channel, and you can play along, follow along by subscribing to both channels. In Eric's last video, he showed Urban Hymns from The Verve. This is an album that is arguably right up my alley, and I was trying to think if there was any particular reason why I don't own it. I don't know if I was resistant at the time to it. I may have gotten a little burned out on Bittersweet Symphony, even though it's 25 years old now. I feel like it's the last video, or one of the last videos that I saw regularly out in the wild on MTV or whatever, that I'm very familiar with. So that may have something to do with it, and it may just be that in 1997 I was still broke and had to be a little choosier about what I spent my money on. But I never looked for it, and in listening to it here in the last couple of days, it's a good record, solid record. Makes me think of the second album, Stone Roses, and spiritualized, a little bit tougher than normal Britpop, but it was really good. It was very enjoyable. It tricked me into thinking that it had a last track a la Sister Ray from the Velvet Underground, with the last track at 16 minutes and change, but it was actually, and thankfully, more like a 6-minute track, doing that CD trick of 10 minutes of silence and then a little unlisted track at the end. And that's great because I really like that closing track. The title has already escaped me. I got too much other information I'm trying to hold right in the front of my mind. But it was really good, and it probably would have drained me if it had been an actual 16-minute song. But that's neither here nor there. I had a tough go of connecting it. The primary thing that I just know off the top of my head about The Verve and Bittersweet Symphony, Eric already mentioned, I believe in his video, that by using a sample that they sort of had clearance on, but apparently not clearance from everybody, they ended up not getting any royalties for that song, their huge breakthrough song for like ever. And I try to think of another situation like that, where a band's biggest hit basically made them no money whatsoever. I couldn't think of anything off the top of my head. And so what I ended up, after doing some research, finding is that in 1997, the song Bittersweet Symphony was awarded Song of the Year, Track of the Year, I forget exactly how they name it, Best Song, Single of the Year, something, in 1997 by the NME. Now, the NME, or New Musical Express, is a British music publication. It's been going on since the 50s, I guess, but as of 1975, they started doing their sort of best of year-end list. And in 1997, not only did Bittersweet Symphony win, but another of their tracks, The Drugs Don't Work, was in the top 5. Now, I've never subscribed to NME, even though I lived in England for a time. I figured all this out using my good friends Google and Wikipedia. And let's face it, with friends like that, who needs NMEs? Am I right? Just pause while you gain your composure. And we're back. So, in 1997, they got the Single of the Year from NME, and so I looked for other year-end Single of the Year winners from NME, and I even got the bonus of an album that had multiple tracks actually in their top 5 finalists. So apparently they were huge on this album. And that was in 2008. I don't know if the album is 2008. I think it is. And that is MGMT's Oracular Spectacular. So this made a huge splash in its moment. It's like Weezer, sort of, if you like their first album best, which I do, and I like this MGMT album a lot. Their second album was like Pinkerton. Their second album, Congratulations, was a difficult record that they felt was more what they were about. And so true fans, whatever that is, fans in the know not to be too effusive about the first record and go straight to Congratulations. The same way that there is a cult of Pinkerton, sort of. But I never bought any other MGMT albums. And actually, I noticed that other than a couple of the big tracks on here, primarily Kids, but also Time to Pretend, which opens up the album, I hadn't listened to the album since about 2011. So most of the album had not been played in over a decade, which is an indication of kind of what a flash in the pan it was, because I was pretty big on it when it came out, and I maybe played it a little to death. Those big singles, I think, what was the other one? Was it Weekend Wars or Electric Feel? I forget which the third one was. 3 big songs that were sort of super marketable, but they felt like they were almost joke songs, like they were too easy to write, which is strange, but you know, artists being artists. And another interesting parallel, sort of, with the Verve is that this band was originally called The Management, this duo out of Connecticut, and they had to change their name the way Verve had to become The Verve. The Management shortened their name down to MGMT, which of course stands for management in most of the world. I seem to find a definitive answer that the band is actually called MGMT. It's not called Management. So I'm going with that, but there is a light debate on that. But the band is referred to by the 4 letters, MGMT. It was fun to kind of listen to it. Other than the big singles, the big tracks that made all the splash at the time, it makes for good background music. Like, I found I enjoyed it more playing it and kind of being otherwise occupied, and it was just kind of good grooves in the background. It sounded really good when I wasn't really focused on it, and when I was just listening, when I was doing more engaged listening, it was a little tougher sledding. Not that it's bad, but it was just like, okay, I get it. Let's move on to the next song. But it's great background music, and it's got some fantastic singles from it. Whether the band thinks they're fantastic singles or jokes. Kids was a really big single, and its video was bizarre. Not one that I saw a lot, but very, very creepy and off-putting. But I did look it up a few times. And so, yeah, MGMT has put out, I think, 4 albums so far. I thought about getting Little Dark Age, which was sort of touted as being a little more approachable. That sounded good to me. But I never did kind of follow up on it, so I still only have the 1 record. And even it clearly is not mostly in rotation. So I think there's a chance Eric will enjoy it. There's a chance that you would enjoy it if you're unfamiliar with it. So give it a listen, and I will throw that connection back over to Eric. The sort of I guess they're electronic. I didn't really talk about what kind of music they make. Electronic bass. It is just a duo of 2 dudes, and they're the 2 guys from the cover, which I wasn't sure when I first bought the album because it seemed weirdly tribal. the cover. But yeah, it's just two guys making music on computers, I think, mostly, but with kind of a warm and indie feel to it. So anyway, throw that over to Eric. Two bands, two albums, two songs, Bittersweet Symphony and Kids, that won or were awarded NME's single of the year, track of the year. Again, I forget what it's called, but that's the connection. And you can look for Eric's response on Monday. So in the meantime, that's all I have. I said my piece, and I thank you for watching.